Okay, we're back. I've cleared my throat. We're ready to go for round 2 of the French Revolution. We're going to just kind of do a little recap of where we've been, and then we will continue and work our way all the way up to the French Republic. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So we talked about in our last video about the situation of France. France has now a new situation. They have established for themselves a constitutional monarchy. King Louis XVI, kind of a weak king, not really a strong lion of a figurehead. He sort of goes with the flows and then spends his time, playing mahjong or whatever he did in his spare time. But there's still unrest. Things still are sort of upside down. Yes, the others, the top part of the others, these lawyers and businessmen have sort of taken over the government. They have revolted. They've pushed the old government authorities out of the way. And now they got to make some reforms to figure out, well, how are we going to make this constitutional monarchy between the new parliament, the new others, and the king? How are we going to make this work? They created the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizens in 1789. They used Jefferson for help, came up with some good stuff, but they also had this idea of authority doesn't rest in people, individuals. Not like we had it worded in our Declaration of Independence and Constitution. Instead, it was in their nation, the group. That one voice is the one that is moving and shaking and making decisions for the entire nation. But this idea of nation, what is that? What were they thinking when they said the nation? Well, they're thinking of an identity that is tied to a unified general will. The will of the masses, the will of the majority, vast majority, and the purpose of the whole nation. All these sort of kind of came into one. Remember, France today, France throughout, from that point on, becomes very, very nationalistic. It doesn't play well with its neighbors. In fact, many of the nations that are going to develop in the next 100 years or so within this region of Europe are going to be all very nationally focused. Kind of like, this is my territory, this is my playground, and you can't play in it sort of thing. We are better than everybody else, we stand above everybody else, therefore we're not going to share any power. One of the reasons why the UN has some problems now of who's going to sort of rule over who and who's going to be the boss is because they're still very nationalistic. And so that's the idea. Individualism is minimized. You yourself are not important. You as a citizen of the nation become important. And it's the citizen who has the right. So the question came up is kind of like, who's the citizen? Well, we have this shift from the concepts of who is citizen, who belongs, who is the nation for. And so before the revolution, it was very much highlighted, focused, centered around the king and his family, those relatives, the royalty, the snobby snobs. Those were the people that sort of defined what is France, what is a citizen. And if you weren't in that class, in that group, you really had no liberties, because only citizens have liberties. Everybody else falls by the wayside. After the revolution, now we have a constitutional monarchy, and we get the tricolor flag, and the white is the king, surrounded by the blue and red, which represent the people. And it's a little bit more inclusive. There's a little bit more equality. You notice that the white isn't bigger than the blue or the red. They're all three of equal weight, so to speak. And that concept. So now we have perhaps in our citizenry, in our nation, we have a bigger group of people, but we're still not including everyone. It's not all the people. It's just those who are citizens. And just at this point, under the constitutional monarchy, just more citizens, more people have been brought into that other category and are now included. The business people, the lawyers, things like that. But your average Joe, still no voice, still not there, still very separate. It's them and it is us kind of a feel throughout this nation that's supposed to be speaking with one voice. In their minds at this time under this constitutional monarchy, this will show you how exclusive they were. You had to be a property owner. So if you were a lawyer, you had property. You were a business owner, you had property of some sort. It may not have been very large, but you owned property. That was a citizen. You could own citizen. But the vast majority of people, 80% of the people, were not landowners. They were just regular workers renting rooms and living wherever they could, or living on the estates of these grand people. Which left many, the vast majority of the French population still outside of the inner workings of their own government. They did not have a voice. They didn't have a say or a vote in their taxation or in the way they lived or what the demands were put upon them. They couldn't make laws to determine what was good for them, what was beneficial to them. It was always still that upper 20%, and the bottom 80% are left kind of wandering around just doing whatever the whim of the upper 20 is. During this constitutional monarchy, I believe it's called a coquette. It's that little flower. You see that trifold again. People such as the Count of Mirabeau, the Marquis de Lafayette. These are folks who are sort of leading the constitutional monarchy charge during this time. They are the big voices at this time. Lafayette served with George Washington. In fact, he named his son after George Washington. But he's now the commander of the new National Guard of France. He's the new armies at home. These are the great spokesmen of this day. And they are embracing this idea of this trifold, this marriage between king and parliament. And in their mind, this is a good place. And why? They're in that upper echelon. They're in that other group. So of course they're happy. They're doing fine. But that 80% is still not happy. So does it work? Absolutely not. In 1792, you have a massive mob uprising, and a revolution within the revolution takes place. A mob revolt takes place. Who's going to be the mob? Who's the one that's upset now? The 80%. So why did this fail? What was still wrong other than that this 80% is not being represented well? Well, in part, King Louis and Parliament made some really bad decisions. One thing they did is they went from gold, silver, hard metal money and went to paper money. Kind of like what we have in the United States now. We have paper money that really has within itself no value. We believe $1 to be worth $1, and $100, something that has $100 written on it, that's worth 100 of those $1 bills. That's just our belief system. But it's not backed by anything. It's not backed by gold anymore. So France did some similar deals. They made this switch. And when people look at paper instead of a gold coin, they're going to go, well, wait a minute. This piece of paper I don't trust it. I don't know that it has real value. So I'm going to, in order for me to be happy with going from a gold coin that I know about, right, to this paper I believe it's worth something, I'm going to charge 5 of these instead of 1 of these. And so that's where this inflation comes from, the idea that people don't put as much value in the paper, and so as a result, everything starts rising in prices. People can't buy anything. And who's the one that gets hurt the most? The Richies? No. The poor people, that 80%. Now they can't buy food, they can't afford clothes, they can't afford places to stay. Their wages are going down because the Richies are paying more paper money. They don't have as much paper money anymore, so less money goes to the lower people. It just becomes really, really desperate for that 80%. There was also this idea of nationalism that had to be, that bled into the church. France was very heavy Roman Catholic at this time. And the decisions of the constitutional monarchy was that we're going to nationalize the Catholic Church. Meaning what? What does that mean? Well, it means that your priest in your parish had to cut ties, so to speak, loyalty ties. Let's call it loyalty ties. Loyalty ties with the Roman Catholic Church, the Pope back at the Vatican. We have to cut those ties, and we have to swear fealty and loyalty to the new constitutional monarch, to the nation. The nation is more important than the Roman Catholic Church hierarchy, even though that had been in place for thousands of years, or over 1,000 years. So by nationalizing your local priests, it touched everybody's lives. Everybody went to church for the most part, even the poor. So now your priest, your clergy, your archbishop, your bishops, they all, if they were in France, they had to say, okay, either I'm going to swear loyalty to the nation, the French nation, or I'm going to swear loyalty to the church, to the Pope and to the cardinals and things like that. And that ripped the country apart. Some priests, some clergy said, yes, I will do that because I want to take care of my flock. I want to take care of my people. I don't want to be kicked out. Others said, no, I won't do that. So there's a lot of turmoil there. The king, the National Constituent Assembly are starting to touch a really big and important nerve in the social life, the spiritual life of the French masses. Again, I said this a little bit before, King Louis was not very strong. He was not a very strong. He was he was a nice guy, but he wasn't a big one on revolution. He believed he was believed to work secretly with foreign countries against the nation. Remember, he's royalty. The revolution that's sort of bubbling up, the others, they're not big on royalty, on aristocracy. And so people in France, the aristocracy and the nobility, they're kind of fleeing into other countries who are still monarchies. They still have kings and queens. And so they're fleeing France and going there. And, these are his relatives. He's still staying secretly tied to them. In fact, I think even his brother fled as a result. So as this is happening, the king's doing nothing for these aristocracies who are fleeing basically for their lives. And as a result, revolutions are starting to pop up all over the place. Foreign countries are looking at France. Neighboring countries are looking at France and going, this is not a healthy thing. This is not a good thing. If you think of people like, or stories like the Scarlet Pimpernel, someone reminded me of that this morning, the Scarlet Pimpernel. You had English nobility sort of playing Zorro, coming into France and grabbing people out of the nobility, out of the clutches of these revolutionaries that are rising up inside the country and are actually trying to get people back, trying to get these nobility back so that they can punish them. It's a mess. It's a real mess. So what rises up during this new situation is a group called the sans-culottes. And my apologize, my French is, I never study French, but I believe it's sans culotte. It means basically without silks, without silk stockings. If you look at Louis on the depiction of Louis on the right-hand side, he's in those knee breeches, the ones that come up to your knees, and then has silk underneath it. This was the old others, that upper class of others that clung to the uppity up kind of mentality. You see the depiction, Louis is wearing the trifold in his hat. He's trying to be part of this new constitutional monarchy. He's trying to do his part, but if you look at the sans culotte on the left-hand side, no knee breeches. He's just wearing regular, ordinary pants. This was your average Joe on the street. This was that 80% that was still not being included in all of the decision making. They were not part of the National Constituents Assembly. They weren't part of Congress or Parliament, however you want to call it. And so these folks, these massive numbers of people, rise up and take over. And by 1793, we have the rise of the French Republic now. Not French Revolution, not constitutional monarchy. It still falls within the French Revolution, but it's now a new revolution. It's now the French Republic. And poor King Louis XVI is hauled off to Lady Guillotine, and he is beheaded. And thus begins the new republic. So that is where we're going to stop for this week, and we're going to come back next week and see what a bloody mess they're going to make of their nation in the French Republic and coming thereafter. Have a good weekend.